welcome to Raconteurs News.
This is Colin Johnson from East Coast Resistance, and you're listening to Raconteurs News.
Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. It is Tuesday evening, it's 8 o'clock, and I'm joined as always by the one and only Jason Holmes. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening from a hot and sweaty little studio that I've got here. I'm just sat in my underpants and my sandals, so just a little bit of a mental picture for all you people listening out there. And any ladies, if it gets moist, it's because you know that I'm in my underpants.
Yeah, well, it also, if you send £50 in a plain brown envelope, Jason will send you a signed photograph of himself nearly naked.
That's true, yeah, with gold thong on and some boots, some riding boots. But it's been a lovely day, hasn't it, today? I mean, everyone's moaning. It's ridiculous. People are moaning now. Oh, it is. And it's...
Oh, yeah.
You know, this is... you see, people like us, Andy, we remember this is what summer's supposed to be like. We get one day a year and people moan.
Well, yeah, I did get a message from somebody earlier on saying the hot weather's not very good for him. His, what is it? His undercrackers are sticking to his nads. So that is a bit of a downside of all this, isn't it?
Well, it depends on who it were, doesn't it? I mean, don't tell us, but you know, we'll just have to use our imaginations. But we've got a great show lined up tonight, haven't we? We've got a great guest. I think you met on Saturday. That's
right. Yeah, we went all the way over to Nottingham and met up with this gentleman. And sorry, I'm just laughing at what Kev Marks just posted in the chat room there. Met up with this gentleman. It's somebody I've known for a couple of years now, but never actually met face to face. So it was fabulous to meet him, and like to give him a big warm welcome back to Raconteurs News. It's Rob Freeman. Welcome back, Rob.
Hi, Andy. Cheers. Nice one. Hi, Jace. How are you both doing? Okay.
Yeah, we're good. We've both had an excellent weekend. I did a little bit of. Shall we say, I did a little bit of mixing with the 1% and got quite a good bit of information. Plenty of good nuggets, but I'm seeing him again on Friday, so I want to keep my powder dry for a while and before I really say anything.
Oh, that's it. Keep your cards close to your chest, mate. Yeah, I look forward to hearing all about that as and when the time is right. So the plan was we were going to be joined by Rob B as well tonight, but Rob's not showing up on Skype at the minute. I'm sure he'll be along. Maybe he's working late this evening or something like that, but we'll get round that. And we've got Rob Freeman with us, and I believe, well, we built the show as we were going to talk about council tax, and also you've got quite a lot you wanted to say about the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act. Where would you actually like to start tonight, Rob?
Well, actually, I dug something out from 2010. 2010. I've saved it just for this show, and I'd forgotten about this. And this is I sort of adopted the stuff it was saying on this, but I was already doing it, and this kind of confirmed what I believed at the time. I probably started doing this back in 2007 or 8. And so what this is, what I've managed to dig out, is from 2010. And it's a whistleblower that was working for a council at the time, specifically working for council tax, that posted on a certain website. So this is back in 2010. And it was brilliant because it confirmed what I was already doing. But it actually helped me out because I was making one mistake at the time. And whoever this anonymous person is, I saved it. I think they've been working for a certain council since about 2007 in the council tax department. And so, like I say, they posted on this certain website back in 2010. I don't think much has changed from that. It was really brilliant because, like I said, it confirmed everything I was doing was right, but it gave me a little bit of extra information that we're doing wrong. So there's about 8 certain points that they were posting. So would it be all right to start with that, fellas?
Yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely superb, that. Yeah, 8 points.
Yeah, and so this is good because it's condensed to 8 points, and it really makes sense. Now, some of this might be obvious to people who've been fighting the council tax thing, and some of it may not be obvious. But I'll just tell you the mistake I made and why this helped me. The one point I've got off this is that the usual process is you get your bill, and it's usually just before 1st of April. It's usually at the end of March, somewhere around there. You get what they deem to be a bill. And for those who were fighting it, I learnt contract law very, very quickly. And so I learnt to send the perceived, but it's not a bill because it's not signed, but for argument's sake, let's just call it a bill. I learned to send the bill back to whoever's issued it with you if you don't agree with it. So I sent the bill back to the council. So that's the first stage. The second stage then is after a few threatening letters, they'll send you a summons and it's usually a magistrate's court. And so what you're supposed to do is send the summons back. And then after, they'll send you a letter saying, we've now received a liability order, and you're supposed to send that back. And by sending the contract back, the perceived contract, the one they're trying to trick you with, there is no contract in place, in effect. And so that's what I was doing. But the mistake I was making is, from my town, the second stage where we were getting the summons to go to court, it had the magistrate's court's address. I was sending mine back to the magistrate's courts, which is right, where you think it's come from. And that's a mistake I made. When I realised, and it's confirmed here by this whistleblower, that we all know now, remember this is back in 2010 this was written, that the councils make their own summons up. That's the mistake I was making initially. As soon as I started sending the summons, so-called summons to court, back to the council rather than the court, everything went away anyway. So is it all right if I just read you these quick 8 points?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He or she starts off, I think it's a he. I've learned several ways that people shoot themselves in the foot, and I've learned the ways that people can avoid paying council tax and often get away with it. I don't like that terminology, but this is how it's written. Number one, and this is really interesting for people. Number one, if you've applied for any type of housing or council tax benefit in the financial year, you have inadvertently agreed to pay council tax. Not nice, but now you know. Always read the small print. Okay, so if you have applied in that particular financial year for housing benefit or council tax benefit, you've inadvertently agreed to pay that council tax. No matter what you do, they're going to come for you.
So that's. Would you say that that's like manufactured consent?
Absolutely.
They've gained your consent from nefarious means.
Well, absolutely right there, Jason, because for people that do apply for council tax benefit or housing benefit, it's usually because they flipping need it. That's why they apply for it. Yeah. So absolutely manufacturing consent now. So number two, when you receive your council tax bill for the forthcoming financial year, if it does not include a little booklet, usually A5, the bill is not valid. That's interesting. I know quite a few people that has to have a little booklet in it. I'm not sure what the booklet says. I think it's all their policies and stuff regarding council tax. But that's interesting. If it hasn't got that little book in it, it's not. The bill's not valid. Number three. This is the real biggie, a real big one. This one. For any bill to be valid, it needs to be considered as served. Returned mail is not considered served. Now remember, I was already doing this 2 or 3 years before, so that really made it fantastic. No matter what they send to you, send it back. So it's not classed as served, okay? Mm-hmm. Number 4 mentions it comes out 1st of April every year, and the councils offer an instalment scheme, so that's not that valid. Okay, another interesting point, number 5. Once you start paying for any financial year, you've already accepted the services being offered. So if you don't want to pay, don't pay at all. Look up deemed contracts. A similar thing. So it's saying once you start paying for that financial year, you've agreed. We know it's contract. You're contracting, aren't you? So it's saying you're better off not paying at all than just paying a bit. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So number 6 and 7 were the big ones for me. If you get summoned to court, the summons is only considered served if it is. Okay, spelt it wrong, but I'll start again. If you get summoned to court, the summons is only considered served if it is not returned to the council. That's the bit I was making the mistake on. Back then, I didn't know that they were making their own summons. I thought it was the magistrate's court, and that's the mistake I was making. So it's telling you there from a whistleblower, if you get a summons, it's only considered served if it's not returned to the council. If the summons is returned to the council, it is invalid, and no court hearing will go ahead. Very simple. Number 7, no court hearing equals no enforcement at all. Okay, and I think most people are aware of this, but maybe a lot of people didn't know to send the summons back to the council, not to the court. And this last one, number 8, once a court hearing goes ahead, the council are obliged to collect the money by any means, including bailiffs, attachment of earnings and charging orders. And that's it really for that.
So, Rob, if you send the bill back, would you suggest that people send the bill back with anything written on it, or just a return to sender? Because I know people have got this. They have this no contract, no assured value, and all this sort of stuff that they suggest to write on your bill and then send it back. But would you suggest that, or would you suggest just sending it back blank?
Well, you know, it's a good question, that, because back in those early days, I used to send it back no contract, return to sender. There's no contract in place, return it. But the other side could argue, if they've got some sort of agreement, they haven't even got an agreement really, but I thought, well, if they deem it as a contract and their trained staff think it's a contract, maybe no contract return to sender is probably not good enough really. But I used that for the first couple of years. And I was really lucky because I had a mate who used to work for the post office, and he got sacked for something. And he sort of, after I'd been doing this a few years, he kind of got into it a little bit. And he was round at my place one day, and I was writing no contracts on some stuff. And he goes, "What's that?" I says, "Oh, to send it back." He said, and he'd learnt about, the legal fiction name, that title, that is not us. He was just learning about that stuff, and everything's a corporation. And he said, best way to get something sent back to someone? I said, no. I said, no, what? And he said, addressee not recognised. He says, it automatically goes back to the sorting office, and it absolutely goes back to the people that sent it. And so I thought, hang on a minute. All the financial demands and obligations are coming in Mr. Freeman. And I thought, well, that's not me. That's my whole basis for doing everything. That name is not me. It's a Crown copyrighted name. So as soon as I started using addressee not recognised, return to sender, it went a lot quieter, a lot quicker. And so I don't use the no contract thing. I just, for instance, if I get a bill delivered here to this property now for a Mr. John Wilson, it's not me, is it? And so addressee not recognised, and there's always got a return address on the envelope, it'll go back to them. So in that same vein, Mr. Freeman, or written in any other way, obviously no financial obligation or demand will ever be in your lowercase. So it's not me. So addressee not recognised, return to sender seems to work every time for me.
I did notice. I have noticed that on council tax bills, because I don't do that. I don't send them back. I just tear them up and chuck them in bin, and that works for me. So I've never sent them back. Now, do they do anything else? Do they escalate it any further? Do they ever try to sort of come back at you with different things?
Specifically for council tax, James?
Yeah, council tax, yeah.
Well, when I did this talk on Saturday in Nottingham, which I really enjoyed doing, I did quite a bit on council tax. And for me, they never came back to me at all, apart from every year there's an automated bill that comes out, and it's for the financial year. It comes out end of March, beginning of April, and it's just every year. So all I used to do was send them back. It was only back in 2013 that they ever tried to come back at me from anything. Now, I've never paid council tax anyway, even when I didn't know what I was doing. But since about 2007 or 8, I was kind of using this system. And I never heard a thing until 2013, where they created a new position in the council. And I told the story on Saturday. And a certain woman, I think a title was Concentric Service Manager or something, Customer Concentric Service Manager. And I thought, well, that's an interesting title, Concentrics. Anyway, she beginning of December 2013, she sent me, she sent a letter in a similar name to mine saying, if you don't pay what you owe, I think it's about £5 or £6 grand at the time, within 7 days we'll go for a committal to prison. And that's the only time they've ever come back at me. And that's all gone away, and I've never really heard a thing since. But it's important to note that, in fact, this will lead. If this is not too boring, I can lead it on to something else that a friend sent me. This really makes sense. And what happened is, from the beginning when I was sending those stupid things back, because they kept sending letters and stuff, I started to learn all this stuff really quick. What I realised is that, hang on, that name, whatever name they're sending it to, is not me. Right, it's a legal fiction name. It's not me. I don't want to be associated with that thing at all. And so what I realised is that there's no contract in place, which is my basis for everything, is that the name's not me, therefore there's no contract in place. If it's a crime, if you're saying I've committed a crime, there's an injured party, then that's it. I've committed a crime, you have to prove it. If not, everything else is civil, which is contractual. It's not in my name, so there's no contract. That's it, end of story. So they can't touch me. So what I decided to do is, after they kept sending letters and I kept sending the stuff back, I then, I think it's back in 2010, I started doing this properly. And I sent the council, I said, look, the thing, Andy and Jason, I've never refused to pay anything. This is the point I wanted to come to. Never refused to pay. It causes controversy, causes conflict, it takes you to court. That's what they want. Every time you send them a letter or notice, they'll call it a complaint. They'll say, thanks for your complaint. You're not even making a flipping complaint. It's because they want controversy. They want you to be in conflict. That's what takes you to court. So what I realised from very early on is I've never refused anything from anybody ever. I've never said, there's no chance, I'm not doing that, or anything like that. All I've ever said is, and this is the important thing I wanted to get over on Saturday, is I accept that if you're saying that this is a bill and I owe it, I accept it, that I might owe that £3,000 or whatever it is. But I'm not an idiot. I'm not just going to accept it and that's it. I'm going to accept it, but on a bit of condition. And it is called conditional acceptance. Okay, you're saying I owe you £3,000 for some sort of tax belonging to a council. No problem, but do me a favour. I'm not refusing to pay it. I'm not withholding payment. I'm not doing anything. If you just show me a little bit of proof that I'm asking for, I'll go and pay you tomorrow, no problem. And the proof I require is a copy of the original contract. I don't even want the original contract. Just send me a copy of it where I've signed it and you've signed it. And then it's a contractual obligation. And second, send me a bill. Don't send me a statement. If you're saying there's a contract in place and I owe you money, send me a bill. And obviously, according to the Bills of Exchange Act, it has to be a signed bill. And it has to be called a bill. If I do some work on your house, Jason, and you say, how much do I owe? I say £100. You say, well, send me a bill. And I'll put for painting Jason's living room, £100 and bill, and I'll sign it. Well, theirs aren't signed. It's just a statement or an invoice. So that's the only two things I say. Send me a copy of the original contract and send me a bill. And if there is a contract in place and you send me a bill, I'll pay it. But of course, there never is a contract in place, is there? The only agreement they have will be from a Mr. Freeman or a Freeman in capital, which is not me. It even says on the birth certificate it's a Crown copyrighted name. So after I gave them a chance to send them two things, and I give them a little bit longer, and after I think it's about 2.5 to 3 weeks, well, time's up for me. I've had enough. So what I then did is send them a schedule and say, look, I'm spending lots of hours on this and I'm busy. So if I've given you time, I've given you extra time, you're not coming up with this proof, so I obviously don't owe anything. I don't owe you a penny because you're not showing me that I owe it and you're not even sending me a bill. So in future, any more communication from yourself, I'm going to charge you this. Okay, and every time from after this date they send me any paperwork, I'm charging you £1,000. And if you send anybody to my house regarding this matter now, I've given you lots of time, I've given you weeks to come up with something. So if you send anybody, it's £3,000 per person per visit. And that's what I did. And what's happened now is, remember they're trying to force a service on us. That's what they're trying to do. And we don't have to accept that service, which I'm sure everybody knows. But the point to it is, I've just recently sent him a bill for £63,000, which is really interesting because... Oh, by the way, when I sent them my first schedule of charges, they never replied to it. So, I'm sending their paperwork back to them, but they're not sending mine back to me, and they're also not saying...
It's a tacit agreement. Would you say it's a tacit agreement?
Absolutely is a tacit agreement, because, if I keep saying, Andy, you owe me £3,000, and I tell you every week for weeks and weeks on end, if you don't say anything, Andy, ever, and I keep saying it, there's a pretty good chance that you owe me £3,000 because you're not saying anything, are you? Do you see what I'm saying? You're acquiescing to the fact that you're not doing anything to try and help yourself or dispute it or anything. And so in that same vein, fellas, by them they've accepted my schedule of charges. And so what's happened is, and I've done this with everything, is, and for some listeners that might think, well, they don't pay anything. Well, I will pay things. If it can be shown that I owe it, I'll go and pay, but nobody ever can. And if you can bill me in my correct name, I'll pay it, but nobody ever can, you see. And so what's happened now is I get them to owe me more money than what they're claiming off I owe them, sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, so that if it did come to a court, you could make a counterclaim against them because you've got the evidence that they owe you money.
Well, that's brilliant, mate. You're absolutely right, because all a judge could ever do if they drag me to court is say he would deem that the councils are sending correct bills because they're all in together, aren't they?
Yeah.
But all a judge really, if he's sat as a judge in his correct position and status, as he sat there in a proper court, all he could ever really do is look at their bill and say, yeah, that's a true and valid bill. He owes them £15,000, whatever. But hang on a minute. Rob Freeman's been sending these bills for a long time now, and there's nothing wrong with my bills. They're absolutely spot on. And so all he could really ever do, Jace, is, if he was really a fair and impartial judge, is deduct what they're saying I owe them from my amount and probably deduct £15,000 from my 63 and then give me the difference, which is why they'll never drag me to court over it. Because under contract law, it's absolutely perfect. And just on Saturday, I just wanted to read you this really quickly. During this process, I've done many things, and I think I'm going to be doing another talk about this in Nottingham. It'll be coming out again. But, in fact, I've still got this because I read it out on Saturday. During this process, every council has a head of legal department, and the head of legal department in my town is a chap called Stephen Oliver. And this is excellent, this, because I sent him some letter I sent the council some letter, and he replied here. I think 3rd of February 2015 I sent something, and the head of their legal department on the 11th of March 2015, Stephen Oliver, sent me this. Now, this is a top man. Okay, he actually wrote, Dear Rob Freeman in lowercase, which was what I wanted him to do. I said, look, bill me in my correct name, written as Rob Freeman, and wrote it out for him. So this is the first time they sort of corresponded in lowercase. And it said, the heading is correspondence dated 3rd of February 2015. So this is the bill that I'd sent them, yeah, at this particular time. And so this is Stephen Oliver, it's 3 lines long. I write further to your letter dated 3rd of February 2015, full stop. Get this. I confirm that the council will not be paying your bill. If you are unsure as to your position, you should seek independent legal advice. Yours faithfully, Stephen Oliver, solicitor for the council. He actually signed it, fellas, in the middle of the sheet like I'd been doing. And for those that aren't aware, if you sign on one side of the sheet, you're classed as a debtor, and if you sign on the other side of the sheet, you're classed as a creditor. Well, the side that they tell us to sign on when we learn English, it means we're a debtor, we're signing the debtor's side. So I put my moniker in the centre, and he actually put us in the centre. But the real important point is the middle line here. I confirm that the council will not be paying your bill. Okay, so in unbelievable excitement, I scribbled on a piece of paper, really excited, and I actually wrote back to him. I'm not reading the whole letter, but I wrote back to him, Dear Stephen Oliver, and I thanked him for using my uncopyrighted name of Rob Freeman. Thank you. Thank you for writing it in that. This bit, thank you for confirming both points, that such and such borough council will not be paying my bill, and by calling it your bill in said letter, that it is indeed recognised by you as being a valid bill. Said council have never ever once produced a valid bill to me. Okay, so what I'm saying is, the head of their legal department has recognised my paperwork as a bill. He's made a real fuck up, really, because he's called it your bill. So now I've had it by a legal top man for the council saying that, think about the implications of that, lads.
So essentially, what you're saying is what happened there is you're telling us that if you just return things to sender and you don't acknowledge it as a bill and you don't, they've done the exact opposite of that and just said we're not going to pay your bill. So they're saying it's a bill, whereas you're not saying that theirs is a bill, and you're asking them to provide evidence of where you're liable for what they term as a bill. But you're not actually accepting it as a bill, whereas they are.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because remember, I'm not refusing to pay. I'm saying, well, there must be a contract in place. Give me a copy and send me a bill.
Yeah, and that's right. But what they're doing is they're acknowledging your bill straight away, so they acknowledge that it is a bill.
Yeah,
whereas you're not doing that. So.
Well, yeah, it makes it even worse for them because it's about acceptance. They've accepted my paperwork as a bill, and I've never once accepted theirs as a bill, and that's the difference. And I must have really gotten rattled. That's the point I'm trying to make. And for a head of a legal top person in a council to actually think of the implications, he didn't say the council will not be paying your alleged demand for money or your illegal demand for money or whatever. He just flat outright said the council will not be paying your bill. Think about that. How much trouble would we all get in if we wrote back to any corporation and just said, I'm not going to pay your bill? Do you know what I mean saying? So he didn't call it an alleged amount for money or anything. He called it a bill. So really, they are really in a really weak position. Yeah, so I wanted to read you that. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting, that, Rob. Yeah. Can you give us a few more pointers? Because I personally wasn't there, but can you give us a few more pointers of the things that you were talking about in your presentation this weekend?
About other stuff apart from council tax?
No, on council tax, but just other different aspects of it. Sorry, I just wanted to get a bit of an overview of the chat that you gave on Saturday.
Okay, well, there's something here that I've got that I didn't mention on Saturday. And can I just read a couple of lines of this out? Mm-hmm. And then I'll talk a little bit more about Saturday. And I forgot about this. This is something I've had a little while. That I've got a friend called Hotep who lives in London. She's brilliant. And she actually found this out for me. And it fits in with what I've just been saying. I'm just going to open this now. Okay. I'm just going to open this file here, Andy. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this is what she found out about the council, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what happened Saturday. What she found out is, this is about council tax. If the amount remains unpaid and the levy of distress has been unsuccessful, then a billing authority can apply to a magistrate's court to have the debtor committed to prison for up to 6 months. Okay, this is what they tell us. Before a committal warrant can be issued, the person must be brought before the court for a means inquiry, which I didn't know this. And like I said, my friend Hotep's found this out. So before they can attempt to lock you up, they've got to take you into magistrate's court for what's called a means inquiry. Okay. If at the committal hearing, which is held at the magistrate's court, the debtor can show the court that his failure to pay his council tax was not due to these two things. Okay. So if the debtor who gets took to court can show the court that his failure to pay his council tax was not due to these two things. One, willful refusal. In other words, the debtor can afford to pay but refuses to do so. Well, I got this information only a couple of years ago, and so again it proves what I've been saying. So willful refusal is you've got the money but you refuse to pay. Okay, number two is called culpable neglect, and this is really important. This failure which could have been avoided, for instance, by reaching an agreement with the authority at an earlier date. Okay, I'll read that again. Culpable neglect is failure which could have been avoided, failure to pay which could have been avoided, for instance, by reaching an agreement with the authority at an earlier date. Now, just going back to what I said about when I sent them my schedule and stuff, they accepted it, like you said, Jason, tacitly. So have I not reached with an agreement with the authority at an earlier date? Yes, I have. Because they've agreed my schedule of charges by the silence, and now they've agreed it even more by calling it a bill. So what I'm trying to say is, if you do get dragged to magistrate's court, you have what's called a means inquiry. And on that means inquiry, as long as you're not guilty of willful refusal, where you've got the money and won't refuse to pay, or culpable neglect, where you failed to come to some agreement with them. Now, I'm covered on both those aspects, so it's impossible, really, for them to take any action. If the person dragged into court can show that neither of those things is the reason why he's not paying, get this, the court can either remit all or some of the debt, in other words, write it off, or they can do nothing. In which case the authority may continue to try to reach an agreement with the debtor but have no power of enforcement. I know that sounds all a bit long-winded. So even if people do get dragged to magistrate's court and threatened with prison, first it's got to be a means inquiry. That's the whole point of it. And on a means inquiry, if you really can't afford to pay it, which is what I've been saying for years, I can't afford to pay it, then as long as you're not guilty of willful refusal and that culpable neglect, as long as you're not guilty of any of those, the court really can't lock you up. And the councils have got to go away and come to some arrangement whereby you can pay. So what I'm trying to say is all's not lost if you do get dragged in there. So that just further confirmed what I was doing was right.
How would you fare if they accused you of failure to pay, and you would? I've heard this one before, and I don't know how valid it is or not. But if they say you failed to pay, and you say, "Well, I didn't even try to pay, so I ain't failed at anything," because if I don't try and do something, I can hardly fail at something. Do you understand what I mean? I can't fail to pay something when I weren't trying to pay it in the first place. If you fail to do something, it's because you're attempting to do it rather than. Well, I didn't even attempt to do it, so I didn't fail because I didn't even attempt to.
Do you mean in my specific case or generally?
Well, just generally, really, because I think I heard that from somebody. I can't remember who. I think it might have been our old friend John Bravo. Not that I trust him, but it's if someone says you failed to do something, I mean, if you didn't try to do it, then you've not failed, have you?
No, it's an interesting concept. I like it. I do actually like it. I see what you mean. By failing to do something, it means you attempted to do it. Failed. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, I'd never use that terminology anyway. I would never use. All I was really doing was reading their terminology, but I would never admit to failing to pay anything. I would, in fact, what I tend to do is mirror stuff back, Jay. So I'd probably turn it round and say that they failed to send me a proper bill and show that that I was obligated to pay that amount anyway, and I'd put the failure onto them, which makes it even better, then, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
So it's a good analogy. That I'll remember that, because by failing, you must have to partake with what they're saying, indulge in what they're saying. I like
exactly.
that.
You don't. I mean, I failed today. I failed my driving test. That's why? Because I didn't even go on a driving test because I've already got a driving license. So I didn't fail a driving test today, but I didn't take a driving test. You understand?
Yeah, brilliant. I like that. So by admitting to fail.
If you admit
to fail to pay something,
then you know that you intended to and you tried to and you've attempted to, but you've not done it. Whereas if you haven't done it, if you haven't even attempted to, then you've not failed, have you?
Yeah, I like the analogy. I like that, Jason. Brilliant, brilliant, mate.
Oh well, you can have that for free anyway. Do it. Perhaps that one in Sheffield that we're going to sort out for you and the other Rob.
Oh yeah, nice one.
So
that was that.
Yeah.
Go on, mate, sorry.
I just want to just get the bare bones of this. This what you were talking about this weekend. I mean, I'm really pissed off that I couldn't get down there, but it just circumstances just had that in it. Were there any other stuff that you put in there that you perhaps want to share with other people? And also, has it been recorded, your talk that you did?
Yeah, it was filmed, weren't it, Andy? So I don't know what's going out, but it'll be going out. It might be on Mark Salon's YouTube channel, so I think it's definitely been recorded and going out. I weren't that good, Jace, you didn't miss anything, to be honest. I'm never that good. I'm not exactly the world's greatest speaker, am I, Andy? But the information.
Listen, we might disagree on that. I think you're good. You've got a really good presence, and you speak to people like you're talking to one individual rather than a group of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that works very well.
Do you know what I've noticed? Does it? Do you know what I've noticed, fellas? With every single speaker I've ever seen, or almost every single one, not quite, there's 2 or 3 that do it, but I see these speakers with they've got wonderful voices compared to me. They sound like fucking BBC presenters. They sound brilliant. Or they might be doing a slide presentation or whatever, and the voices are great, and the information's like unbelievable, but they're looking down at the floor, and I don't class myself as a speaker. And Andy will tell you, the venue last time, Jason, where you was and I was in Sheffield, was a little bit difficult because it had really bright spotlights. But generally speaking, generally speaking, if I'm doing a talk, I actually make eye contact and talk to people in the audience. So it's not really a talk, is it, Andy? It's just like a sort of get-together. And it makes people feel more comfortable. And it's like an energetic thing, and it becomes more enjoyable. We have a bit of a laugh as well, didn't we, Andy? On some occasions, on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, we had a right good laugh. Yeah, it was an enjoyable day. I think we ought to give a shout-out, because you're doing a talk there again soon, aren't you, Rob?
Yeah, I think it's a month from Saturday, another month, so I'm not sure exactly what date that'll be.
Right, I seem to think the date that was mentioned was the 20th of next month.
Oh, is it? Okay, I'll check with that, yeah. I think you're probably right.
Let's have a look. Yeah, the 20th is a Saturday, so that's probably right then. But,
yeah, I think they said third Saturday in the month or something.
Well, that's one I'll be able to get down to. I'm pretty sure of that. So I'll see you down there, Rob.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, brilliant. I don't think I covered much more on council tax, Jason, on Saturday, other than what I've said tonight. Obviously, I did it slower and read some of the paperwork that went backwards and forwards, but I think that's about it, really. So basically, in a nutshell, I never refused to pay. I asked for a copy of the contracts, not even the original, just show me a copy, send me a proper bill. Well, you're not doing it. The name's not me. So, it's fraudulent, as we know. It's a Crown copyrighted name. I'm not being pushed into, committing a crime, committing fraud. So, the name's not me. If you think I've got a contract, just show me a copy, send me a bill, and I'll pay it. Well, you haven't. I'll ask again. Okay, this is what I'm going to start charging you now. Any more communications? You're not doing anything. You're just making idle threats. So, that's what I'm going to charge you. And every few months, I send them a bill that I'm never going to enforce. But they end up owing more than me. And every bit of paperwork, 3 most important bits of paperwork, the so-called bill, back to the council, the summons, which I was doing wrong, but now I'm doing right, back to the council. And then you'll get a letter saying, we have now received a liability order, send it straight back to the council. Interestingly enough, I did say on Saturday, I don't know if you can remember, Andy, I said I've never seen anybody actually have a liability order yet. Mm-hmm. We get notification. So I'm just reading the chat room there. Somebody's just asked a question. We get notification that they've acquired a liability order, but they never show you the liability order. So as I'm saying this on Saturday, one lady shouts and says, "Well, I've got a liability order. I've actually got mine." And I said, "Oh, interesting." Now, anybody who's ever received a liability order, which I've never seen, but when they've told me about it, it's never signed. And this lady says, "Well, I've actually got one." I said, "Oh, right." The reason they're never signed is they're not valid, as we know. The council just make them up themselves. No judge has ever, or magistrate has ever sat and created that liability order. So this lady stands up and says, "Well, I've got one here." And when I've heard people have got them, they've never signed. So I said, "Is it signed?" She went, "Yeah." I thought, wow. So she passed it through and it came to me and I was at the front. And when I saw it, I laughed because it had a signature, which was a photocopy signature, but it had no name. So rather than somebody printing a name and then no signature, on her particular one that came from the council, they did it the other way around. They scribbled some scrawly signature and photocopied it, but there was no name. And I said, and everything was just typed. It looked like I'd just knocked it up on a computer. And I said to her, "This is supposed to be a valid liability order. Do you think it is?" She went, "No." And I said, "Look, there's a signature." I said, "Do you know what that name says?" She went, "No." And everybody who looked at it, nobody could tell what the name said. So again, it's just an invalid order created by the council. That's the only time.
It is an illusion because I remember back at the time when you did that talk for us up here in Sheffield, we had a bloke who were coming along to the meetings who I think we're a bit anyway. It was disruptive anyway, but he did bring a council tax bill and a liability order. And they were on the exact same font. They looked exactly the same. The only difference was the liability order was printed on yellow paper, and it had liability order rather than a council tax bill. So it was exactly the same font. It was obvious that the council were printing these liability orders off, and then sending them out as if they come from a court. And that's the part of it, innit, is that they try to tell you that it's coming from one place, but it's actually coming from another. It's a trick. It's a confidence trick.
It is a trick, and I've done this. If you get a summons, actually ring the magistrate's court and say, is there a listing for a hearing for me, and give him your name, and they'll say no. And even if they get notification that we've received a liability order, ring the magistrate's court and say, I understand that you've given a liability order to the council against me. Can you just give me, and check and verify it? They'll say, no, we've not issued anything. They actually tell you on the phone. So there's no listing for a court case from the summons for you. And there's no liability order ever issued from the magistrate's courts. They actually tell you when you ring them up. The reason there's no listings for a court, because you can say, I'm just checking what time I need to be there if you get a summons. The reason is that we know the summons is created by the council, but there's probably about 1,000 going through that day that they're just stamping. So that's why when you ring up the court staff can't tell you, because they're not issuing anything, as we know. They're just hiring the room for the day. And that proves it. I
was sat in Barnsley Magistrates Court a couple of years ago, and I was fighting a speeding fine, and I made loads of mistakes, and I ended up coming out the wrong side of it. But I was sat in Barnsley Magistrates Court, and the outside the court, in the sort of corridor area, and I was right next to the entrance where they have the G4S and they have the metal detectors and all that, and you have to walk through and do that. And as I was sat there, a UPS bloke walked in with a great big massive jiffy bag, and he just said to the security, it's liability orders just here for signing, for stamping. That's what he said.
He actually said, you heard him say that?
Went out. He actually said that.
Wow.
Well, also as well, I've mentioned it before. Many years ago, I worked in a local council. I was in the finance department, and it was the first year that council tax was on the go, because it had previously been what they call community charge, better known as poll tax. And I remember paying a visit to the computer section, and one day there was a big pile of paperwork there that had just been printed off. And I said, oh, what's that? They said, oh, it's liability orders. I said, oh, I thought they came from the court. Oh, no, we print them. So it's been going on right from the start of council tax.
Wow, interesting. And just on that same vein, before we move on from this, have you ever thought, has anybody ever really thought what a liability order is? A liability order is only an order, if it's valid, is only an order made by a judge or a magistrate that we have the liability. It's not over and done with there. They say they've got a liability order. Even if they did get a valid liability order from a judge or magistrate, that's not the end of it. All the judge is ordering is that Mr. So-and-so is liable for that bill. It's not finished there, because what happens is they say we've got a liability order, and then they just flipping stick you with a £3.5 bill or whatever it is, don't they? That's not what a liability order is for. It's an order that one of us has the liability to pay a bill. Now, that doesn't mean that they can just stiff you and shove the whole amount on you. It just means that you're liable. Remember the thing I read earlier? There's nothing to stop, even if you do get a valid liability order, there's nothing to stop you then negotiating and saying, well, look, I haven't got the money. You've got an order saying I'm liable, so it's an admittance by somebody that I'm liable. But that doesn't mean you have to fork out the £3,500 or whatever it is. It doesn't mean that you can't negotiate and say, well, look, I can't pay that. And then they've still got an obligation, the other side, to come to some arrangement on some payment terms. So people think that the liability order is that's it and it's over, and it's not.
And it's gospel. And in the liability order, like you say, it's a liability order. It's just an order that says you're liable for that. It doesn't give them any authority to enforce that, does it? It just says that, okay, you're liable for that.
And it just says that you're liable. Go on, Jay, sorry.
I would just say, and I just suppose that that's if it comes from a court, but it clearly doesn't. It's from the council. It's the council sending you really what is a begging letter.
It is. It's exactly what it is. And just one last point on this, that I think it may have been Peter Kroll that was on Doc Rock's show a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that once they got this so-called liability order, they could take action, like it said earlier on with that whistleblower. It said they can instruct bailiffs, attachment to earnings, or they can put a charge on your property. Well, he got notification that they put a charge on his property. Now, I've helped a few people out here. I said to him in the chat room as he was doing his show with Doc Rock, I said, Peter, did you actually phone the land registry up and check whether there's a charge on your property? He said, no. I said, well, do it, and I can guarantee you there is no charge on your property. And I've had other people do this. They've had a letter or a notification saying, you've not paid it, we've got the liability order, we're putting a charge on your property, and they try and frighten you to say, we're going to make you sell it. And I've had people, they phoned up the land registry and there is no charge on the property. So council tax is a scam right from start to finish. They've no real authority other than to provide a service. There's no contract, there's no bill, there's no invitation to court summons, there's no court case, there's no judges, there's no magistrates. They do not obtain a liability order, and then they do not put a charge on your property. Wow, what a massive scam from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything really is. We had, I think you noticed it. I think we had a question in the chat room from Mithrin. Moving on from council tax for a second. I mean, we can come back to that. And Mithrin wrote, if I can find it, could the guest recap the gas meter things, please? So
wow. Okay, that's. Phew, nice one, Mithrin. That's kind of like saying, can you read the first quarter of the Bible? It could be a full show in itself, this, honestly. Wow, what a journey I've had with these people.
Both.
Are you the same?
Oh my God, have you not seen my video? Have you not seen the video online where the police smashed their way into my house?
Was that a couple of years ago, though?
No, it was last year.
Oh, yeah, I did see it, yeah. In fact, if you can, send it me again. I did see it, yeah, it was last year, wasn't it? I know it was quite a while ago, but I'll have a look at that again. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Go on, carry
on. Well, I think maybe we could perhaps do this another time in great detail, because the utilities is something that I do know a lot about. Mm-hmm. And the only, apart from a couple of driving offences, the only time I've ever been to court was for actual gas. But I've mentioned it before. They were trying to fit me a prepayment meter in, and the way my house is situated, the meters are inside. I've got like a raised wooden flooring that's quite expensive, and the old gas meter was really close to the floor, and they kept putting me under pressure over this gas. I think I ran a bill up for £3,600, I think, in total, which was pretty good. Because there is no bill. We're not really paying for utilities. We just think we are. But anyway, that's another story. Mm-hmm. And because this was really early on when I first started going to court, and I went to court on purpose just to have a laugh and find out what were happening. And because the way my meter was situated, in fact, I got another mate who was a gas fitter. He used to work for British Gas, and he got sacked as well. And he looked at my gas meter and he said, well, Rob, he said it's impossible for him to fit a prepay meter because your meter's too close to the floor. It was a concrete floor underneath the meter. He says, but they'd have to rip up all your wooden floor. He says, they'll never do that. And because I knew that even if I went to court and I lost, which eventually I did, I knew that no matter even if I lost, they couldn't fit me a prepayment meter in. So I had a real laugh. I went to court about 7 times over this, just having a real laugh, knowing that even if I lost, I couldn't lose. And I learned so much about the entire court process at Magistrates Court about this. But anyway, that's for another time. I found out that it's impossible for I've just got some new information today, and I can't back it up yet. So apart from what I found out today, this is the position I was in. Okay, you can steal water, you can steal gas, but you can't steal electricity. I don't know. Are you two aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I heard something along that lines. Perhaps you're probably better off explaining yourself.
Well, I've known this for a long time, but there's a copper from Sheffield, Jace, from a man in your neck of woods. I forget his name now, but he does a radio show, and he's a bit of a stand-up comedian. He's from Sheffield, but he works in Hull as a bobby. But he does a bit of a stand-up routine. And last year, I was listening to I don't know where it come from on the internet. I was listening to his show. He's not live; it's just a picture of him, and he just talks. I've only ever heard 2 shows. And he's quite funny. He's got a good sense of humour, and he's not an ex-cop. He's still working as a cop. He just does this as a sideline. And he said, "Did you know you can't steal electricity? It's impossible to steal it." And I thought, oh, flipping out, because it's nothing to do with what we do. He's just a stand-up comedian, but he did mention this, and I just happened to catch it, and I thought, well, this is brilliant. And he said, yeah, and he told the story of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And he said, if Goldilocks goes into the house through an open door, sees the porridge, if the bears have got a gas stove and she warms it up, she can actually get into trouble for stealing gas. He says, but if the three bears have got an electric stove and she warms the porridge up, she can't be in trouble for stealing electricity. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And he said, check out the Theft Act 1968. So if you want to check out for our listeners, the Theft Act 1968, just Google it, it'll come up. And what he's saying is, it's impossible to steal electricity because, for instance, if I come to your house, Andy, and I'm sat in your room now, because our bodies are an electric field, I'm actually extracting electricity from your computer, from your TV, from your light sockets. Because we have electrical fields, we're constantly, when we meet and engage, constantly taking and giving electricity backwards and forwards to each other. Okay, so I've got a friend who's just actually been to the police station today. When I realised this, in fact, it was about 2 years ago I saw his stand-up routine. I had a friend who said, "Can you help me out? They're trying to get me for growing a certain plant." And he said, "I'm not bothered about the growing the plant thing. I can handle that, but they're trying to get me for stealing electricity." And what the charge is, I said, "Well, what's the charge?" And he said, "Extracting electricity." And I said to him, "Right, okay. They've said extracting electricity. Is that the charge? Have you got your charge sheet?" He went, "Yeah." And I wasn't with him. I was talking to him. I said, "Do you want to check it again?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "I know what it is. Extracting electricity." I said, "No, get your charge sheet and read it to me." He went, "Okay." And he was a bit pissed off. He thought I was just being sort of pedantic and fussy. Anyway, I went and got his charge sheet. I went, "Right, read me the charge." And he said, "Abstracting electricity." I went, "Stop. Abstracting electricity, not extracting." And he went, "Oh shit, yeah." So everybody I know who thinks they're getting done for stealing electricity thinks they're getting done for extracting electricity. It's not. In fact, somebody's just put in the chat room now, extracting electricity. Society, whoever you are, go back and...
No, what's...
Now, there's a massive difference. Check out what an abstract is. An abstract is a thought, a creation in your mind. That's all it is. The reason being is because they know that we're constantly giving and taking electricity to each other. So abstracting electricity is the charge. Now, what's an abstract? It's almost thought crime. If I'm sat with you now, Jason, and I'm thinking about stealing your wallet from your pocket while you're not looking, but I never do anything, it's just a fucking abstract. I'm not doing anything. But if I do it and you're not looking, and I take it out of your pocket, that's extracting. And there's a massive difference. They've tried to redefine the word abstract as taking without consent, but it's not. If you check out the word abstract, it's in the mind. It's not something physical. It's not something tangible.
Well,
okay, so
that's in the word, isn't it, itself? So
exactly, yeah. So they can only ever charge you with abstracting electricity, not extracting. And this is what the police officer on the stand-up routine is coming from. Okay, so having said all that, I know I'm not answering the question there for Mithrin. The reason being is a friend of mine's gone to the police station today for abstracting electricity. Now he knows I don't think anything's going to happen. But he also thought he was going to get charged for extracting gas. He's been told he had a solicitor. Now he's been told today, and I haven't got the details on this, and so for Mithrin, I'd like to do this a bit further down the line when I get more information. My friend today had a solicitor, and the solicitor said to him, "Don't worry, you can't get in trouble. You can't steal gas." Okay, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet. His own solicitor has told him that it's impossible to steal gas. Don't worry, they can't do anything about that. So there must be something else. Now, are we full of the same sort of gas? Is natural gas the same thing of what comes out of our body, especially if you come from Sheffield, Jason? Gosh, imagine there's a lot of gas coming out of that.
Do you know, this has absolutely knocked me sideways because I've just Googled because I was certain it was extracting gas. Now, if you go to Ofgem, sorry, let me just. If you go to Ofgem, they do say extracting gas, but if you actually look at the law itself, it's theft of electricity, illegal abstraction. brackets. So that's absolutely floored me. I mean, I didn't know that, and that's some of the new thing that I've learned today. But yeah, you're right. But on the Ofgem website, it's amazing that they actually use extracting electricity as a phrase, but because that's not a legal document, I don't suppose it really matters, and they can pretend that it means the same thing. But
sorry, Jace, I don't know anybody apart from myself who's come up with this abstracting. And look at Kenneth's given us there in the chat room a definition of abstract: existing in thought or as an idea, but not having a physical. Oops, it's just gone. Not having a physical or concrete existence. Abstract concepts such as love or beauty, dealing with ideas rather than events. And again, he's put theoretical. We have been discussing the problem in a very abstract manner, denoting an idea, quality or state rather than a concrete object. And then last one, relating to or donating to art that does not attempt to represent external reality. So there we go. Incredible. It's all in the wording. And as you know, I'm a bit of a wordsmith, but I don't think anybody else besides myself has come up with this. And so extraction and abstraction obviously is not the same thing, is it? So really interesting. But like I say, I've got some information today that you can't steal gas. Now, when you think about it, look what we're made up of. Are we not made up of electricity, water and gases? I mean, we breathe in oxygen and out carbon dioxide, don't we? Is it absolutely impossible to steal those three things? I think it is. I think we're passing and exchanging those things between us just in our interactions anyway. So, like I say to Mithrin, I'd rather come back to this at a later date if that's all right, because I want to get this information off a friend. Yeah, does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. That's perfect. Wow, I've just noticed we've nearly had an hour gone by. As always, really? the time flies. So you normally go for a music break at this time, so picked out what I thought was rather a suitable tune from David Bowie, and we've got Rebel Rebel, if that'll sort you for now, Rob. And
I'm just going to extract some pee, so I'm off.
Okay,
Cheers.
We'll be back in about 4.5 minutes then.
listening to RaconteursNews.com. Stay tuned for more untwisted, unsweetened news. Please consider buying a t-shirt or making a donation to help support us. Thank you for your support. We do it for us all.
And welcome back to Raconteurs News on this beautiful, sunny, warm, balmy Thursday evening. Magic, innit, Jason?
It certainly is. It's and it reminds me of 1976, that great summer, and that I remember. It's the one standout memory from my kid. And I was only 6 years old, and I remember it. And today just reminds me of that. I just wish that we had more 1976ers and less of this, 1 day summer a year bollocks, just because they want to spray things in the sky and piss all over us. Sorry.
Well, did you not notice yesterday the sky was lovely and blue, but today it was that horrible drab white pasty colour?
Well, actually over here it was really a deep navy blue.
Really?
It actually looked like it had got a bit of moisture in it, but the cloud, there was no clouds. It were absolutely clear as anything. It's been lovely and hot all day, but I did notice it was quite a nice, deep, really deep blue sky. But I've been over in where did I go? I've been over in Cheshire today, so Warrington and Congleton and all the way over there. But I've been past Manchester Airport twice, once on the way there and once on the way back. Pretty close to Manchester Airport anyway. Mm-hmm. And I can report absolutely no chemtrails. It's amazing that some days these contrails that the people will have us believe that they are form, and then other days they don't. It's just the most ridiculous thing in the entire world.
Well,
it's not. In fact, it's not the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. The most ridiculous thing in the entire world is that the at the moment we're demonising Russia, aren't we? Russia's being demonised.
Yeah,
they've been getting them kicked out at Olympics. They come up with these ridiculous stories. So what's been happening is the authorities in Russia. This is state-sponsored. Not state-sponsored, sorry, state-organised. Because Nicky Campbell this morning on Radio 5, he rephrased it when it was it said state-sponsored, but he rephrased it as state-organised, so it sounded more, they're involved. This is doping that's been going on. So they've been giving the athletes drugs, and then what they've been doing is they've been switching the samples for clean frozen samples that have been taken before. So they've got on loads of tubes of piss, and then they've frozen them when people are not on drugs. And then when they've come to drug test them, they've gone and snuck in and broke into the place where they're testing them and swapped the drug ones for the clean ones. It's just so ridiculous. That's the most ridiculous. Anybody that gives any creed, any penance to that is, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot.
Well, to me, something that was pretty telltale on regarding these linear clouds that keep appearing in the sky was some video of what looked like an Airbus. It might have been a Boeing, but it was flying along and it was producing this white trail, but it was only producing it from one wingtip, not the other one. Clever trick. Yep. And it wasn't coming from the engines, it was coming from the wingtip.
From the wingtips, yeah.
The engines
it's
are midway
obvious
down
that
the wing.
Something's going. And even there's even admissions that they're doing this sort of thing. There's a bloke who stands there and he says that they're spraying barium into air to combat climate change. Well, if they're doing that to combat climate change, it's working. You're making it too cold. We want it hotter. We want more days like this where it's really hot and people are complaining that it's too hot to go to work. I mean, it only takes it to go up to 30 degrees and people are looking for excuses to get off of work. That just shows you how starved of decent weather we are in this country, where you can sit on back garden and have a drink. And this is all done on purpose. And people need to understand that they're not getting a summer because somebody's deciding that they're not allowed a summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've had our tea break, and I believe our guest Rob's back from making his brew. And welcome back, Rob.
Cheers, Andy. Yep, thanks. I've got a couple of lovely.
Oh, excellent. And we've also been joined by another member of the RN team. It's our very own Unique Lee. Good evening, Lee.
Hey.
Good evening, Lee.
Hello.
Hi, Lee.
So I know you came in because you've recently been challenging the council tax yourself and had a certain degree of success, Lee. So would you like to perhaps tell us about your experiences?
Well, you can do, but I was more interested in what Rob was saying before about this. See, there's a little thing with the county councils. I don't know whether Rob knows this, but can the county take money? In other words, yeah, the reason why. Yeah, and I don't know if it's the magistrates' court or the county courts, but one of them, you can actually put in a negotiable instrument to the court. And I'm wondering if you could actually use that instead of people use escrow accounts where they just won't pay the money. Well, they won't. They'll hold on to it and put it into an escrow account until the debt's been established. But I wondered if you could put it into the court and say, okay, I'll give the money to the court as a bond, and when you can prove liability, I'll let the court release it to you. Have you seen anything like any of these the acts?
Well, actually, Lee, Rob B has got it in an escrow account of his own, ready to pay upon certain proofs. But you've hit on a couple of things there. Why is a council tax affair going to magistrates' court anyway? As you know, Lee, I think we've discussed this. It should be going to county anyway, because it's a money claim.
Yeah.
But I've been doing a long court case for a friend that I spoke about on Saturday, and we filed about a year and 3 months ago. But I've been helping him. He's a really close friend for 3.5 years now. And what I found out is that there's a facility in the court where you can pay money in. See if I can get this right, because it's a couple of years ago since I read it. There's a facility in all courts where two opponents, one can pay the other one a sum of money and the court can hold it. So there is that facility in every court, Lee, where they can hold it. Yeah. In effect, I suppose you're saying it's even better than an escrow account because you're actually paying it into the court and they're holding on to it, yeah?
Yeah. So it takes all of that thing about that you're not willing to pay it. It just destroys that idea already by doing that.
It's a great idea, Lee, and it is. And I've seen that there's a facility in every court for that to happen. And it's just that nobody does it. So yeah, it's a great idea.
So that was one angle I thought about doing it, but my approach, mine's different to yours, Rob, because I didn't recognise the debt from the beginning. It's like I was saying on the chat before. It's all right saying, well, you're a liable person, and we've identified that person as the liable one, but it still doesn't go back to the right to the beginning. Well, how was that debt formed?
See, this is what's brilliant. You can speak to 10 different people who are battling council tax and get 10 different ways of doing it. This is what's great about this.
Yeah,
I agree with you, Lee. That's just my way of doing it, but yeah, absolutely brilliant.
So that was my foundation stone that I basically told the council officers when I was there. It was like, here's my foundation stone. You don't have jurisdiction. The magistrate may have court, but if you look at the magistrate's court, I think it's section... Under the jurisdiction to issue summons, it says where a complaint relating to a person is made to a justice of the peace, the justice of the peace may issue a summons to the person requiring him to appeal before a magistrate court. Now, we know fully well, no justice of the peace are signing these liability orders. They're signed by legal advisors, which are not justices of the peace. So there's your first part of fraud. The masking behind that justice of the peace title.
Absolutely. In fact, and again, Rob B does it another way. He questions the authority of the ones allegedly billing him, basically. Yeah. He questions the structure, their job descriptions, their authority, their scope of office, and that's another way of doing it. So, fantastic. All this is going to come to a head eventually, and we are going to get, the remedy that we want.
Yeah, you get the impression that there's a lot of people chipping away. What I would say is that the best way for people, especially for people listening, is find the simplest way and the simplest way that works for you, because some of these things that you're talking about, Lee, are going way above my head. You know what I'm saying? So it's the simplest way. The way that works for you is the best way, really.
I'm a very simple man. My whole purpose of this is someone's claiming that I owe them money for a service that I have no hand in. As far as I'm concerned, legally speaking, that's what's called an unconscionable contract, because I need to be part of that formation. I've got to inspect the quality of the goods. I've got to inspect all kinds of things to make sure that's beneficial for me. And hence I'll put my sign of nature to it. You can't make one for me. You can't give me a benefit that I don't particularly consent to. It's called in vitro beneficium non datur. You can't confer a benefit upon someone without their consent. Now that's what they're doing. Have 3 services for these: fire service, police commissioner, and bin collection. Well, maybe one of them I might consider, and may volunteer something for the bin collections and emptying bins. That's negotiable. But I would never go in my normal life go into those 2 organisations saying, "Please, can I have a service from you?"
Yeah.
They're not really on my list, to be honest. They're probably 1,001 that I might consider if I'm completely desperate. But they're not a priority. So I'm saying there's no way I would ever, even if I was outside of my right mind, why the hell would I ever make a contract with those 2 entities? They serve no purpose. I've never seen them since apparently we made a connection. No, I've never seen sight or sound of them.
Well, what you've just said, Lee, is really deeper than what most people think, because that's indicative of the whole system. The whole system of commerce and legality is nothing more than a so-called group of individuals that have got some sort of title name, whether it be a council or, whether it be a council or a court or a certain police service. What's happening is, just for those that aren't quite sure, is right across the board, we're being offered services. Yep. We're being services, products and services basically, but mainly services. And things like council tax, we're not only are we being offered, they're being forced on us. We know that legislation is supposed to be by consent, but it's not consent because we're actually being forced upon them. They're actually forcing their services on us. And like we said before, if you look at everything, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunals services, the police, I've just got the police manual from 2015, and in it they call themselves a service. Social services, everything's a service. They are service providers. And so we have a right, that's why it's contractual in nature. We don't have to accept that service. And council tax have gone really over the top and are trying to force the service on us. And legislation, it has the power of the consent of the governed, apparently. But what that's really saying is it's having the power of somebody who accepts the service. If you accept a service, whether you're tricked into it or not, if you're willing to accept the service, that's the only time the legislation applies. But nobody can, it's that free will thing again. Nobody can force you to engage and undertake and participate in accepting a service. Otherwise, it's out and out slavery, which they'll never openly tell you that's what it is. So you've always got a right to deny that service. When a judge locks you up, he's actually providing you a service. Same with the police officer who arrests you, he's providing you and the rest of society a service. So you're absolutely right there, Lee.
So you see, the thing is what we've got to do is we've got to. I know you're chipping away at the system there, and you're chipping away at all the different things. But what we've got to do is we've got to get people to think in a different way. Because if I say to anybody that I don't pay my council tax and I don't, and this is why, they always come up with the same line, which is, how do you get away with that? Whereas really what they should be asking is, how do the council get away with what they do?
Yeah.
So we need to change people's perceptions, don't we? So I think keeping it simple is probably the best way to and while Lee's doing all this, this great work and coming up with all these different concepts, it is quite a lot for somebody, a layperson, to take in. But again, it's got a value because it's chipping away at the system, chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. And if we can chip away at both people's perceptions and the system itself, then the quicker it's going to come down.
Mm-hmm. It's the venue that's the problem, isn't it, Rob? It's the magistrates' court venue that's the problem.
Well, that's brilliantly. Again, you and I, although we may think differently, we are on the same page, because I've always said from years ago that that word jurisdiction, what people talk about, for any court or whatever, has got to what they call seize jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And as you know, Lee, if they don't get jurisdiction in the first place, the whole thing falls apart. But my whole thing, Jason, has been about, because I have a different perception and I'm able to look at stuff 360 from different angles. And the word jurisdiction really means venue, which is, you're spot on there, Lee. The jurisdiction is the venue that the event's taking place. That's why when you go to magistrates' court, they automatically get jurisdiction because it's a commercial court, contractual court, whatever, and that's the venue that we're in. If we want to try and go there as a living man, well, they don't hear us because we shouldn't be in that venue. That's why they don't hear us. You can't have a living man in a venue that's for dead entities, and so that's the jurisdiction of there. So if I come to your house, Lee, and try and throw my weight about and do something, well, that's your jurisdiction. I'm then breaching yours, as you know. And so the word, as far as I'm concerned, jurisdiction and venue are very, very, very synonymous and closely linked to each other.
Mm-hmm. If I could just jump in there, we got a question which I thought was particularly poignant at the time, and we were talking about chipping away at the system and all taking our different approaches. And Big Davey G, good evening, Dave, has asked how or what do you replace it with? And I just said, to clarify, is that council tax or the cops, Dave? He said the system. So how or what do we replace it with?
Go on, Lee, I'm sure you've got some fantastic stuff here, mate.
Well, you can't change the system, can you? You have to rebuild it completely from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did like Doc Rock's response there. Good evening, Doc. He said, broadly, the system is neutral. We need to swap the psychopaths for better qualified folk.
Yep,
the system itself would change as a response to this. And get some debt-free money, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's the point I was going to make. Brilliant by Dr. Rock. Hi, Doc. Are you okay? Brilliant. It's the people running the system. The infrastructure, I don't know if you agree, Lee, the infrastructure's sound.
Yeah.
You know, it's been built up over a long period of time, and the facilities are there. It's the people, the psychopaths running it. But the number one thing I was going to say myself is that instead of what we class as money, and that's a subjective thing in itself, but the thing that we class as money, instead of being a debt instrument, an instrument of credit, and then the whole thing changes with the right people running it. Do you agree there, Lee?
Yep, totally. We need a purge of all of these lunatics who, again, I don't blame the people. It's the system that's programming them to be this efficient little machine, and then they can go home happy and say they serve their bosses well, and they're doing well for the country, and all the usual brainwashing stuff that goes with them being a very good slave. Sadly. But we don't see it that way, do we? We don't see each other as slaves. We see each other as empowered people, but the system doesn't see us that way. We're just numbers to generate revenue for them. That's what has to change, the mindset.
Well, you see, the problem, like Doc said that the problem is not the system itself. The problem is the people running the system and the psychopaths, and I completely agree, because what they're doing is they're using things that should be for our benefit, such as electricity, gas, and services like that, and instead of saying, here, look what we can do for you, look at all these things we can give you, what they're doing is they're using them as weapons against people.
They've inverted it upon us.
Exactly. So we could keep the same system, but just not use. If the psychopaths aren't in charge, they won't use the things that we value as weapons against us, because anything that's of value becomes a weapon to them. They either tax it, they'll ban it, or anything that's of any use to society, they will use that as a weapon against you.
Here's the most dangerous thing I heard recently. I went with my brother to one of these health assessments. They've got rid of Atos. They've got this other company now. And we had to travel all the way to Lewis. And do you know what the woman said the receptionist said to us all? Customers. I've got to tell all my customers. And I said, whoa, hang on a minute. What do you mean customers? Are we not all patients here? And she went, I've been told not to call you patients. I have to call you customers. And I went, and you're very easily brainwashed, aren't you? Good to see the system's working well. And she just put her head back into her computer.
Well, it's funny there because as Jason were talking, what I was going to say is that the problem we've got is that it's the corporatisation of everything. This is the thing. Everything as we know now has become a corporation, and they've even tried to corporatise us with that name. And so what's happening is corporations, anything you can think of right up to the Vatican is a corporation, again unjustly enriched off the suffering of living men and women. That's the problem. By corporatising everything, I mean, people talk about fascism this and communism this, and the whole thing is a corporate takeover, really. By breathing life into a corporation, they've extracted life, if you like, from a living man and woman and corporatised us. And so the same rights really are merged into one. And so we've got faceless, unaccountable corporations that have become the new slave masters now, and we've become corporate vessels ourselves. So corporations are basically getting unjustly enriched off our sweat, labour, equity, and our pain and toil. Yeah.
And it is the reason why I've linked it to being customers, how they're slightly just changing everything, because my big challenge to the council was, again, going back to your connection before, they believe that you and I have a customer service relationship somehow, right? You're not really anything other than a customer to them. Now, I said before, the magistrate, when he assumed, he said something in front, he said, you ever been writing to the customer? And I went, whoa, objection. I am not your customer, right? I want you to put that in fact. And he had to rescind the comments. He went, yeah, you're right. I went, so we've established we have no relationship, inferred or otherwise, expressly or implied. I'm expressly telling you, I don't have a relationship with you, so stop sending me things. Because that's how you kill it. They think you're a customer to them, because that's why they use a post office box, which is another angle I've looked into. Post office boxes should not be used by your council trustees. It should be coming from the council office itself, not a privately operated post office box. For customers, right? When did they make you a customer? When did you form a relationship with them to be a customer? Ask yourselves that one first.
Well, this is the thing in commerce. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's not the living man or woman that's a customer. It's that name, that title. Yeah. All commerce, all law, as we know, everything can only operate through titles. And it's the Mr. Lee Smith and the Mrs. Debbie Osborne. That's the customer. That's the commercial facility that these global corporations are working through now. Unfortunately, if you're in the unfortunate position where you're not working on, you've got to rely on some sort of state benefits. And I've got lots of friends who are doing this. Some are single mothers, some are just struggling, some are unwell, need disability. Unfortunately, the commercial facility is the very thing that's enslaving us, that we're trying to get away from. That obviously was created by the birth certificate. That commercial facility, that legally dead name, is the only means that we have of operating through commerce and getting our money, sort of thing. And so that's a stranglehold. Yep, sorry, go on.
That's right, Robert. I mean, again, this is a place where they've got you by the balls, because back in December, I had a heart attack, and when I was in the back of that ambulance going to hospital, and while they were performing that surgery on me, I was happy to be a customer. I was glad I were a customer. So you sort of you grab by balls, really, aren't you? You've got to be a customer, and that's how they use that weapon against you. And if you're a customer and you're happy to be a customer, then you're it's some sort of tacit agreement that with the corporatisation of services.
Yeah, but this is the same argument I had with the job centre themselves. They keep classing me as a customer, and I had a 2-year battle with them by saying, please, someone just answer me this question. According to law, your statute law, we're all claimants at law. So how the fuck did I become a customer? What the hell am I buying? Customers buy things, don't they? So when I come in here, what am I a customer to?
Do you know what you are a customer to?
Go on.
All these entities that are offering a service are only getting paid for doing the administration, for doing the paperwork. Mm-hmm. That's all we are customers to.
Yeah.
That's why when I said you can't get into trouble now, I know for stealing electricity, water, and gas, you can't. We're not really paying for anything. We're just deferring a payment.
Yeah.
But the point to it is, all these corporate entities now, all those services that they're providing, is really just providing the paperwork. And what they're doing is, it's dressed up like they're selling us a product or providing something that we're buying. So we're never buying electricity, we're never buying gas, we're not even buying a widescreen TV, a car or a house. What we're doing is, because it's the UK corporation, we're in a state of bankruptcy called a Chapter 22 bankruptcy, which is debtors in possession. And what that means is that we're allowed to carry on trading, but all that's happening is, because we're in a state of bankruptcy, is we're exchanging pieces of paper, namely, let's say, £5 £20 notes. We're exchanging pieces of paper. Let's say we stick £5 £20 notes for a TV. We get the TV. The TV's free. We're not paying for the TV. What's happening is, what we're paying for is for the paperwork for the other side. That's why you get a receipt for the books to balance, and that's simply because we're in a state of bankruptcy. And that's all anyone is really charged us for, is for the administration, the paperwork, rather than the goods or services themselves. Did that even make sense?
Yep, absolutely right. Yep. It's all there is, administration. But they're convinced that they're customer services, and I'm like, when you walk in, there's a personal advisor looking at you, and I'm like, well, I don't know what you are. I need to see an employment officer. And that was my other big argument. I got sanctioned and my claim terminated because I went with that approach. I was like, I'm not seeing anyone unless they're an employment officer, because that's who I should be speaking to. I don't know who the advisor is.
That's absolutely brilliant. Because why would, if you were a customer, why would you be seeking advice anyway? Exactly. That's perfectly what you said. What you're looking for is an officer who can maybe help you find some employment.
He's an employment officer. That's his title. Employment. Obviously, he's not a personal advisor. I don't want advice. He's there to help me with employment and do everything under their own charter. They've got a corporation charter. They're there to help, aid and assist. And that was the angle I went in. All right, I'm going to put you in your duties. You're an employment officer. You're here to help me. Here's my business plan. Here's my plan for the next couple of years. And here's how you're going to fund me. And the guy terminated me claim eventually because he wouldn't sign my agreement.
Listen, I've just got to answer my door because I think I've got a slight knock on the door, so I'll be gone 2 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Bailiffs. It'll be bailiffs. They've heard him on radio. Well, he's in anyway.
That might be it. I doubt it somehow, but they seem to leave Rob alone, but you never know what's round the corner. I just noticed that Ken's put a definition of customer in the chat room for us. Customer, noun, a person who buys goods or services from a shop or business. As in, Mr. Harrison was a regular customer at the Golden Lion. Or 2, with an adjective, a person of a specified kind with whom one has to deal. I.e., he's a tough customer. So, thanks to Ken and thanks to the Oxford Dictionary, because we know that
I can drag that one back. If you look further back and look to customs, you'll find it's to do with prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
It always does.
He was a tough customer. It doesn't come from that. It comes from being a prostitute, charging money and haggling.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Just, innocent little factoids.
He was a tough customer. He would only pay me threepence halfpenny.
That's the one.
Just to give a,
It's just a nice context on when you think, he was a satisfied customer. Think about that one. What did you get serviced by? Okay.
Yeah, so, sorry, is Rob back with us now?
Yeah, sorry about that, I'm back, yeah. I don't know if you mentioned it when I was gone, but obviously soliciting is supposedly against the law, so never have a solicitor. It's exactly the same thing. Prostitutes don't get into trouble for prostitution, they get in trouble for soliciting, so that tells you everything, doesn't it? Except those solicitors don't sell their bodies, they sell our bodies down the river, so...
What if you're accused of curb crawling?
Well, some of the cars I've drove, that's about as fast as they can go, crawling against curbs.
It's a joke. It's a joke. I know exactly what happens when you're accused of curb crawling. Right, so we've got about we're 32 minutes from the top of the hour. Yeah, well, we've got about half an hour left. So where are we going now?
Tell you what, can I insert this quickly? This was a reply I got off me. My brother sent one of these things off ages ago. Well, last year, about council tax. I mean, asked similar questions I did before. I took it up and started running with it. But here's a reply we got back, and I won't read it all. It's just the main parts. It says liability to pay council tax is based upon holding an interest in the relevant property, and a duty is placed upon all persons retaining an interest in property. There is no requirement for any contract to be made, they say. There is no requirement for a particular man or woman to act in its stead. This is when I asked them, well, who's this Graham Bourne guy? Who is he exactly? And this is what they say. There is no requirement for a particular man or woman to act in its stead, its stead, in order to give legal validity to the council's duties. In other words, if that's an artificial person that's doing all the billing, it's okay. It's still legal. That's really interesting, that, Lee. And that point, what you said, could you just repeat that bit again where you said there's something about basically there's no, you don't have to have a contract in place. Could you just read that bit again, please? Yeah, again, if you want these copies, I can give them. I can retract all the stuff that's not personal. But it says, it's a duty placed upon all persons retaining an interest in property. There is no requirement for any contract to be made. You see, listen to that, how they phrase it. It's all in the words. There's no requirement for any contract to be in place. Well, yeah, they're not saying anything wrong there. That's not saying that we've still got to pay it. They're just saying they don't have to have a contract in place. Can you see what I'm saying? Yep. They're not. They're saying that there's no requirement to have a contract. Well, anybody can say that, can't they? That's not saying there's no requirement to having a contract in place, but you've still got to pay it. They're not saying that, are they? They're just mentioning the point that there's no contract. They don't have to have a contract in place. Here's the last reply from mine that I sent to him. I've been trying to resolve this one with my chief executive officer. Well, the last one I sent him, I didn't do what I usually do, and that's bond them to the top tier. I didn't bond them to the monitoring officer and the other guy. So I left the door open, the bugger took it. He delegated it down to one of his little minions, and here's the reply. I'm trying to resolve this, by the way, and here's what his minion told me. This was 6th of May. Now, bear in mind, I've gone to court, and they've gone eerily silent. So this was a month ago, and it says, I am writing to you in reply to your letter to the chief executive officer, Jeff Raw, dated 2nd of June. He has asked that we respond to you on his behalf when I expressly told him not to, which again just tells me all of the codes just don't mean anything to these people. The honesty, trustworthiness, honesty, integrity, all those code things, the principles. They don't care. So we respond to you on his behalf. I see from my records that your queries have been raised on several previous occasions. And it's the same question. He gives me the same verbatim answer. It's to do with the Finance Act, and that's where they get their power. So I've been saying, well, can you document and verify the proof of, that you've got jurisdiction to do this? So he continues on several previous occasions and answered in full every time. Now, if I ever show you the letters, he just sticks to this one line. The Local Government Finance Act grants us the authority to charge you all. That's it. That's all he clung to. Please note, for any future correspondence in a similar vein will be treated as vexatious and not replied to. So how can I resolve my matter, Rob?
They always. I've heard that so many times. Vexatious. Wow.
My trustees are calling me vexatious. I don't know where they're getting that idea from, especially when I'm trying to resolve it and saying, look, will you just give me the proof that you're actually you've made me a customer somehow without my consent.
They've actually written that in strange language, Lee, and if you'd like me to translate, it's oh shit, you've got us by the balls, so we're just going to call you vexatious and nasty and just carry on regardless, because there's some fucking stupid act that was written in 1992, we're just going to carry on, because you've got us by the balls. So that's the official translation.
Oh, I've had some belters, man. Some of the things they've come out with, they've talked about unwritten constitutions of the United Kingdom before now, and I'm like, what are you people talking about? Written and unwritten laws of the United Kingdom, and I was like, you're missing the Great Britain and Northern Ireland part of that. You're missing a little out.
Wouldn't that written law be common law?
Yeah, the unwritten stuff, yeah. It's usually common sense, like don't punch anyone in the face. Don't stab people. The common stuff. The only reason he brought out contracts is because people were, nefariously just breaking the contracts and welching out at the last minute, so they had to codify it somehow and make you bind yourselves to it so you weren't an arsehole. That's the whole reason why all that came in. Untrustworthiness, And it was supposed to resolve it, which, it did, didn't it?
There's a lovely response there from Doc Rock in the chat room. He says, "A vexatious customer. Welcome to the world of commerce." Let's face it, nobody in the world of commerce says, oh, you're going to charge me $1 million. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'll pay it now. People negotiate, they haggle. That's what commerce is all about. People don't just say blindly, oh, that's what you're going to bill me. Yeah, fine, I'll pay it.
Well, Society there in the chat room just put a great comment. He's put, so why don't they just threaten to stop providing these services to you? And that's what they should do. If you're not willing to pay for it, well, just stop providing you with the service. That's what your internet providers would do, and your telephone company, wouldn't they? And these people that subscribe to TV stations and stuff, if you don't pay, they just stop providing you the service. That's a great comment there in the chat room. Why don't they just stop giving you the service?
Well, the other problem you've got is if it's a service, then it's my right to contract and terminate them as well. No, if I've got a certain Sky package, I've got the common law right to not only just engage in a contract, but to also terminate the thing. Now, what they're saying is because I'm a happy customer, or everyone is, you're stuck with these services whether you like them or not. Well,
yeah,
I'm aggressing your common law right to terminate contracts too, by the way, chummy. You can't take that right away from me. I want to terminate that. And if you don't let me, then I'll take you to court. It's as simple as that. I'll be the one aggressing against you.
That's what made me laugh when it's the council tax people are saying that they don't need to provide, there doesn't have to be a contract in place. How can it be anything else? If there is no contract in place, contract makes the law. There is nothing else.
Well, why are we in civil court? Contract.
Why are you in civil court for a civil debt if no debt existed from a service that wasn't there? Again, it goes back to logic, doesn't it? Where's the debt emanating from? A customer service relationship. Well, when was that formed? When did I ask for that account number to be generated? In fact, who did that? They're nothing to do with me. I don't know how that was generated because I've never asked for any of your services, and I certainly wouldn't enter into contract that I can't cancel.
And also, Lee, added to that, even if, which there isn't, there was a customer, a customer provider relationship. Yeah. Ooh, it's not fucking indefinite, is it? It's not for infinity. You can withdraw as a customer at any time, can't you? Just because you shop at Tesco for a year, don't mean you've got to shop there for the rest of your flipping life, does it?
Well, you can't force loyalty upon me either. Is that what you're trying to do? Forced loyalty, that I'll never leave you. Well, that's not going to happen.
I won't mind if I've got nectar points or something. We're not even getting anything back, are we?
Well, the other problem you've got, again, it's another masked word, is council tax bill. Now, which one is it? It can't be. It's got to be one or the other. It can't be a tax bill. It's got to be a tax demand, hasn't it?
Well, I was just thinking, you can't have a bill for tax, can you?
No, you can't. You can have a self-assessment form. If you're self-employed, that's when you volunteer to give your money to the government. Self-assessment, it's clear. It's voluntary. That's why you're self-assessing yourself. You don't have to. They'll do it for you. But again, it comes back to the person and that corporation name, because if you've registered, you're an employee of the state, therefore you can pay tax to support the war, because that's what the state is, a war machine.
Yes.
So there's lots of simple things to accept to make this work. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to work out. If you realise that the state entity is a war machine and you're an employee of it, stop whinging about paying tax. I don't particularly want to be an employee of this state, and I don't particularly like giving my war funds when I should be giving it somewhere else to maybe people who would appreciate it more, like healthcare, communities. I don't want to be giving it to a faceless entity that's going to take us ever furthermore into Never Neverland.
One that openly says that they're prepared to implement a nuclear device and kill 100,000 people. Let's give her more money.
Yeah, Theresa May just come out. Oh, she's willing to press that nuclear button. I'm like, oh my god, here we go. Fucking Game of Thrones, here we go, eh? So we've got another lunatic who's willing to, use force. Great.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, there's only two possible circumstances where she's going to press that button. And the first circumstance is for a first strike, and the second circumstance
playlist
would be a response to a first strike.
Either way, we lose.
Either way, the deterrent didn't work, did it?
Well, would it?
There are no winners with nuclear bombs, none whatsoever. Nobody really wants nuclear bombs. Nobody's going to ever use them. The nuclear bombs that they've got these days. They are never going to use them because the twats that are at the top that have got the control have too much money invested and too much invested in all this. No matter what side they're on.
Yeah, they're better off doing a bioweapon. It's just a lot more easier. At least the buildings are still intact, you know.
Yeah, but if a bioweapon could, it's difficult to get themselves away from that, isn't it? If you do a bioweapon that's of something that's going to hang around for a long time, because it'd have to wipe everybody out, then what's the point in doing that? And then you still need people to be able to produce your electricity and to get all your things that you need. So they're going to need a certain amount of people.
That's the big.
But nuclear bombs, I mean, it's nobody's ever going to do it. All it is just making money for the people that are going to make the bombs.
My point is, I would rather give my tokens for whatever they're worth to something else rather than people who are obviously lunatics and aren't working for my benefit or anyone else around me. So That's my stance. You know, call me a rebel, call me a, antichrist, whatever you want to call it, but I'm not into war. I'm just not. I'm not cool with it.
No, neither am I. No, I don't think anybody's cool with war, are they? Nobody's cool with war. No. But what we've got this these people have the majority of people have been tricked by this put together, polished machine that seems to be running politics the world around. They're all the same. They all look the same. They all act the same. They all do the same things. They all say the same shit. And it's all an act for us, so that we all fall in line. And we need to get away from that. Don't fall in line. And I think it's beginning. More people are beginning to come round to our way of thinking and not really want this nonsense anymore. It's just perpetual war, perpetual killing, and anybody who's got a conscience can't really support this crap that we're living in at the moment.
No, and this is probably one of the reasons why I bowed out of being a worker bee about 7 years ago, and I realised, you have your eureka moment at home, when the lights all flash and you think, oh my God. I retired. I mean, I'm in lawful resignation, basically. That's my stance. Lawful resignation. I'm resigning from all of this nonsense. So I haven't done anything for 2007, I think. I've tried to help people on the radio. I've done private stuff, but working for the system, no. I've stopped. Sometimes you have to stop for this to stop. So I'm not paying as much tax as everyone else. I'm still getting tax as an employee because, as me and Rob had to chat about, when people are claiming benefits, you don't realise you have an employment contract, right? You're working for the state as an employee of it, and you're paid poorly, granted, but you have an employment contract. That's why it's called a job seekers agreement.
Which is why when you're on ESA or whatever it's called these days,
employment,
you pay national insurance.
Of course you do. And here's something else that you'll find out. Well, it depends if you get your claim terminated, like I got mine done. First, it got suspended for 4 months, and then I got immediately terminated because I wouldn't play games with them. They got me under secondary legislation. But when it got finally terminated, I got my P60 through. And I was like, well, the last time I got that was when I got made redundant. On it, it's very specific, isn't it? Give this to your next employer. I was like, well, who the fuck was I employed with? The only one I can remember was the job centre. So I got my P45 and my P60 from my last employer, which I was claiming benefit from. Right, work this one out. Was I working for them? You better believe it was, because of his taxable income. So people need to stop saying dole scroungers and benefit scroungers. It's not what you think. You've been fooled. It just isn't that. Because I've got proof. The whole thing's an accounting fraud if you look at it properly, the employment system. Jack Straw owns the private fund that runs the entire thing. It's all accounting. Someone throws a order through. The other one who receives it tips himself and gives himself what's called an emolument. He then sends that receipt back to the state and it gets reimbursed back into the pot. That's it. It's a cycle. It's a circular fund that goes round and round in circles. Self-funding. So if you think any of your friends and family are funding you while you're on the dole scrounge and watching Jeremy Kyle, I'm sorry, but your money's going to the war machine. It's not going into benefits. They don't need your money. There's a private fund for it. Another truth that people don't particularly like to hear, but there you go. This is reality.
Yeah, because it challenges their conditioning. That's why, because they're conditioned to view people who get any sort of benefits as scroungers, and you can see that, like you say, with Jeremy Kyle, that sort of thing. It's all set up. It's all designed so that you'll get that perception. It's not rocket science that the type of people that appear on Jeremy Kyle. It's not rocket science at all.
Mm.
So
it's just one they always use, isn't it? It's the connecting dot that they always use. Dole Scrounger, Jeremy Kyle, Big Brother, any show that just takes your mind from reality. That usually associates with people with who are claiming dole or claiming a benefit. It's always that association. I don't know why the media does it, but it does.
Well, it's an agenda. It's got to be an agenda. The media does it constantly. I mean, there's lots of TV programs on Channel 5 and Channel 4, and they're all benefits. I mean, you have on benefits and famous, and I mean, honestly, that's been a show on benefits and famous.
Really?
Anything to demonise people who are on benefits and the propaganda is there. But we are so simple as a society. We are so childish that we believe, because essentially all it is the same as playground talk, chatter in playgrounds with kids. That's all it is. That's it's just on a bigger scale, a bigger, wider scale, and towards adults. And so if we grew up and said, "Look, we're not having this anymore. We're not having this anymore. You treat me like a kid. You treat me like I'm a child. I'm not a child. So don't try to tell me how I should feel about one thing or another." But we don't, because we just get people just following sheep, I suppose, if you want to call it that. I mean, I hate that word, but people do follow trends. And look at this Pokemon Go thing. I mean, have you got that uniquely? Rob, anybody got Pokemon Go?
No.
Well, I thought it was dead funny as well. I've seen one or two memes floating around the place, and it's been linked to the Brexit, and it's saying the very same people who said that we ruined their future by voting out are the same idiots that are now chasing invisible Pokemons around the planet.
I mean, it's just beautiful, isn't it? It's just absolutely beautiful. I mean, just when you think that you have all these different things that come on Facebook and things like Ice Bucket Challenge and what everybody's doing and these things, and then this Pokemon Go thing comes along, and people are going round their own houses with the video camera on and mapping out their own house.
I just don't understand where people are going. I mean, but getting back to the courts and all that kind of stuff, the only reason why I think me and Robert are on the same wavelength is because we had a little private chat. One thing I was concerned with, my angle with this is because the system's becoming more automated, and I've noticed this with writing to them for so long, because I'm one of these, I like to write letters. I do like to pester them with handwritten letters. I call them my pen pals, my brand new pen pals, until they call me vexatious, and then obviously I have to stop. But over the months, I've realised all of these automated messages and the syntax never changes. And I've had confirmation from them that they can't change the programming, because I've told them, look, it's aggressive. I don't like the way you talk. I don't like the way you spell the words. I don't like the way you bold, highlight, and put rubric everywhere. change your programming because it's unfriendly. And he went, there's nothing to do with us. That's already pre-programmed in the pro forma letters. Now, the reason I started getting angry with this is because I thought, well, it's getting more automated. Are these really people that are doing this? Or are these bonded, oathed officers as members of a trust, as a corporation? Because they have to be real people, right? So my angle, again, if I ever lost jurisdiction, I got pulled into a subject matter of my own, mistake. That would be my other angle. Okay, well, I want this Graham Bourne to actually physically attend because I want to know if it's him that's sending me these demands for these bills. Now, if he's not, and if he's an automated person, then you're performing fraud. Because he has to be an oathed officer. He has to be liable. But if he's a program, then we've got a problem.
Well, this is really interesting, this. Going back to looking at things from a different perspective, Lee, all we've got to do is keep remembering, and I know you three, all you three really know about this, and maybe some listeners don't, is that, excuse me, we're just taking... we're taking council tax and courts and different stuff, benefits and stuff, and we're putting them to one side. But again, if we look at the thing as a holistic, as technology is becoming more automated, Lee, as everything's becoming more automated, the council tax stuff and the having to pay the bills, and their symptoms, their side effects of the whole system on every single level, from as minute to as massive as you can get on a metaphysical, spiritual level, the whole system runs the same. And so as one part of it becomes more automated, the whole system is becoming more automated. This obviously, we can see this now. And the reason, in my opinion, is why. It's because eventually living people like you just said, Lee, we are waking up in millions. If they can set and create fulfill their agenda of everything becoming automated, and we keep saying, look what they're doing to us, look what they've done. Well, it's not they, it's us. Fucking human beings are doing it to human beings. Brainwashed human beings in perceived positions of power are doing it to each other. So it's us doing it to ourselves. And now we've started getting military people and ex-police starting to break ranks and think, hang on a minute. Military people, I spoke to one on Saturday. He said, I fought for a fucking corporation, not for my country. And as we're waking up globally, I think, and I don't know if you can put me right on this, Lee, I think the race is to become fully automated, fully synthetic and not organic. That's their agenda, to get it all in place. And I think what we'll find out is there's relatively very, very few beings of people that are actually pulling the strings. So basically what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is the game is, that's why I think they call it the human race, their agenda is to get everything fully automatic, fully machined, fully running along, computerised and synthetic as possible and as toxic as possible, and cut out that living presence before enough of us wake up. I don't know if you'd agree with that. I know we're going to be wrapping up soon.
Yeah, I do, actually. I've got a little meme myself. It's called the redundancy of mankind.
Brilliant.
Just made redundant. Because we're all the best supercomputers on the planet. We're all uniquely brilliant as a supercomputer. But guess what? The system doesn't want us. It wants a different version that's a bit more suppliant and a bit not as clever, but will do the job. We're easily replaced now. That's the problem.
It's very true, Lee. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lee. It's been great that you've been able to add to what Rob's got to say there and just provide a little different angle. Thank you as well, Rob. It's always great to talk to you. I'm so glad we managed to coax you out of retirement. And I know our listeners are looking forward to hearing a great deal more from you. I know we'd certainly like to hear you back on the radio more. Now, whether that takes the form of doing a regular slot with us or at some point maybe even taking your own show back again, we'd certainly be more than happy to give you a place here on our end.
Oh, thanks ever so much. I'm crap at it, really, but I don't think I'm good enough to do a radio show, but I'll definitely come on as a guest, yeah.
Absolutely,
thanks,
mate. So,
the dark side's open to you as well, Rob.
Thanks a lot, Lee, thanks.
Oh, there you go. Special guest on the dark side as well. And I know you're standing in for Tony Friday night because Tony's not able to do the music Friday night. Lee, have you got anything special planned for then, or is it just as it comes?
As it comes, mate. It's how the mood strikes me that night.
It's Club 7.
The chat will make the music, put it that way.
Oh, Jason's requested some S Club 7. There you go. But before then, we've got. We'll be back on Thursday night. We've got Paul, our high-level financial insider, coming on for his July update, and we'll be followed at 9 o'clock by Dr. Dr. Rock's radio show. Always a great show. Not sure what Doc's got in store for us this week. He always has some surprises last minute, so I'm looking forward to that one. Then we would have got tunes from Ken, early doors on Friday night. That will be played by Luby this week because, as I say, Tony's not available. Jason Lee will be doing the music a bit later on, and then that takes us through to Sunday when we've got Windows on the World, and then we're back round to Monday where we've got the dark side of the room with Unique Lee. Anything special in the pipe for us this week, Lee?
I've got 2 guests coming up. Mark Stevens, who's very hard to get hold of. He's a very elusive man. And I've got Nicholson coming back on. He's just tying up a video. So, yeah, 2 potential guests. And we'll see how we go. Maybe even one from Rob Freeman. Who knows?
Oh, yes. There you go. I'm certainly looking forward to that. And we've got someone joined us in the chat room tonight. And I saw the first name and I thought, I wonder. And it was just Andrew. But then he posted a couple of things and I realised it's one of our favourite guests and absolute hero and genius. Whatever accolades you'd like to pile on him as well. He's changed my life. He's changed Jason's life. And many hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the world. Big thank you to Andrew. And he came up with a suggestion for a track to play out with, which I think is probably pretty perfect after what we've been talking about tonight. And so we'll leave you with a track from the 80s. It's Imagination and Just an Illusion. Good night, folks. Anybody else going to say good night?
Good night.
Just an illusion.
Good night, cheers.
Right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for listening, and good night.